Greetings, aliens. This is TJ, and you're watching Studio Sessions with Astronoize. Did you know an EQ is an advanced volume fader? Let me explain how and why understanding this simple concept will drastically improve the sound quality of your mixes. Alright guys, so here we are inside of Pro Tools. Let's go ahead and take a look and I'll quickly explain what I meant by an EQ being an advanced volume fader. In each frequency range you have a gain knob. This boosts or cuts. This is what I mean by a volume fader. So basically you're controlling the volume of a certain frequency. As you can see here, it's 89.3 Hertz. And when the Q is higher, that band gets narrower. When the Q is lower, that band gets wider. So in essence, that's all an EQ is doing. It's just boosting or cutting certain ranges of the frequency spectrum. So how's that practical in your mix? Let's go ahead and open up an analyzer right here. I'm using Span. This is a free analyzer. I'll go ahead and include a link to this in the description box below. Let's go ahead and I'm going to play the loop. You can look and see where like some peaks and valleys and everything is at real quick. Let's just get a listen. So as you can see, down here is where my kick lives. Mid-range is probably going to be where that clap lives right here, this peak. And up high is where the hi-hat lives. Okay, so that's how you read a frequency spectrum. How's the EQ practical to this? Because each instrument, even though, let's say a kick is a low frequency instrument, it still is going to contain some high frequency elements. Clap is a mid-range instrument. It's going to contain both some lower and some higher frequency content. A hi-hat is mainly high frequencies, going to contain some mid and some lows. So each instrument has overlap, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And in the context of mixing, what you want to do is you want to try to make space for each element. So first of all, kick drums. We don't particularly need lots of high frequency information depending on what type of kick you're going for. A really snappy, punchy one, maybe a little more highs than other stuff. But what I generally like to do is I'll go ahead and take a low pass frequency band, and what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and roll off a little bit of the highs up here. What I'll also like to do generally is I'll take a relatively narrow Q and I'll go ahead and boost it first. And you can, as you can hear, when we boost it and play it along with that acid instrument right there, it has a lot of frequencies that kind of conflict each other, basically. They're taking up the same space. They're fighting for energy. And I'll go ahead and say in the low, mid to low frequencies, that is the most energy consuming part of your mix. So if you have lots of overlap there, not good. High frequencies, you can get away with that in some cases. So what I'll go ahead and do is with kind of a narrower Q, let's put this at like 3. You don't want it too narrow. It gets unmusical if you get too narrow. I'll go ahead and just notch that out. Maybe 2 dB, 3 dB, whatever. Use your ears and listen to it in context of the mix. Very subtle thing, but all these little subtleties as you go through an entire mix, they really add up. So what I'll also do on a kick with the high pass band right here, I like to roll off below like 35 Hertz. So moving on, let's go to the clap here. Without as steep as a roll off, I like to, on a clap, go to about 200 Hertz. Unnecessary. You don't need the frequency range down there in a clap. It's not going to make a difference. And also with a clap, the high frequency range, it's kind of unnecessary as well. You don't need much of that information. You do need a little, so don't go crazy with it. But I'll leave a very mellow curve right there. Just kind of roll off maybe around like 13K, 14, 15. Moving on. Hi-hat. So again, rolling off some low frequencies, not too steep of a curve. I'm gonna go up to, sometimes you can go as high as 1,000 hertz. Sometimes there's information down to like 200-300 hertz that you want to keep. You don't want to totally just thin out your hi-hats. Depending on the type of hi-hat, depending on the sound you're going for, use your ears. Good rule of thumb is probably around 200 hertz and below. Don't need it. Go ahead and roll that off. So moving on to this acid line here. Now this is going to be the most crucial part because this is taking up a lot of space in the frequency spectrum. As we can see here again when I solo it and we look at the frequency range. Lots of sub down here, lots of low mids. As we saw in the frequency spectrum, not a lot of high frequencies. I'll go ahead and roll that off. And I'm going to roll off probably, let's say around like 70, 80 hertz, something like that. Because below that information is unnecessary. That's going to leave room for our sub and actually for our kick. So I don't know if you can notice if you got some good speakers or good headphones that you're listening through right now. It definitely does make a difference, and you might say, oh, okay, well, it lost a little bit of weight, but you have to keep in mind that these mix moves are in context to a song. So one thing to keep in mind when you are EQing is you're not EQing instruments so they can be played on their own. So let's take a listen in context to the song now. So let me show you one more thing. I'm going to boost that Q all the way up, make that band really narrow, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to boost this gain up, and with everything playing, I'm going to sweep around this frequency knob right here and listen for what elements in particular are going to be clashing with the clap, the low part of the clap, and the low mid frequencies and the kick. So let's just take a listen as I sweep around the frequency range here. So around 208 hertz. Let's go ahead and take that gain, drop the Q down maybe to like 4.5, 5, something like that. Notch it out about 3 dB. So let's take a listen. I'm going to leave it playing, and I'm going to mute and unmute all of them as it's playing. See if you can hear a difference. So I feel the most noticeable difference comes from this acid line right here, in particular that low mid range. If you really pay attention to that and be mindful of not letting that particular frequency range build up, your mix will definitely be cleaner. So yeah, hope you guys got some useful information out of this. I know it definitely can make or break a mix, knowing how to properly use an EQ. So definitely just keep that in mind, and we'll see you next time. Peace.